In this video, I'm going to show you 4 bass lines that every jazz piano player should know. Hey, it's Waltz Tobey here from jazzmental.com. Thanks for joining me for another one of my tutorials. Now, these bass lines are important for 2 very good reasons. The first one is you're going to play a lot of solo piano. You need to know these bass lines in order to keep the rhythm going and make it interesting for the audience. And number 2, it's really easy to get gigs when you can take over the bass player chair and the piano player chair. That means that the band leader only has to pay for 1 person and he gets 2 instruments in the orchestra or the band. Now, I did this a lot when I was working my way through university. Because I could play left-hand bass, because I could play chords, and because I could cover the melody, often I would take the place of 3 musicians for 1 price, and I would get a little more than the other players for covering 3 different chairs. And these are typically the bass lines that you will need to know in order to get gigs like that. And of course, play great solo piano. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go through the concept for each of the bass lines. Then I'm going to jump to a real piano and show you it in a solo piano context. All right, let's get started with the number 1 bass line, and that is Half-Tme Feel. Take a look at the sheet music on your screen. I'm just going to write that in here. Half-Tme Feel essentially means if the quarter note equals 120, you're going to play the bass note at quarter note equals 60. So that means half of whatever the time is, meaning that instead of doing a walking bass line, you're going to play half notes. And you're going to do that whenever the chord changes. So for example, if we reharmonize this first bar to C7 sharp 11, instead of playing the 5th, which you would normally do if it's the same chord, for example, so if we reharmonize it, you're sticking in a different half note here. Same thing for over here. Instead of just playing an A to the 5th of the chord, which would be E, you're going to change the chord to a D7 sharp 11 and play D in the bass. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is play it on the piano. I'm going to take some liberties along with those half notes and that half-time feel and show you what it would sound like as solo piano. Okay, the next bass line that you should have in your arsenal is the standard walking bass line. That means that you're playing essentially swing and you're playing a quarter note on every beat. Now, what you're looking at here is rhythm changes. Now, the thing that you'll notice about the walking bass line is, and I see that a lot of other people on YouTube are talking about walking bass line and they're talking about walking your bass up like this. It's kind of really hokey to do that, and I'm going to suggest that you try not to listen to that advice, but rather what you're trying to do is you're trying to catch the chord with the bass note, and then in between, which are these notes here, on 2 and 4, you're coming at the note from either below by a half step or above by a half step. So for example, now you'll notice very clearly that what I'm doing is I'm accenting the 2nd and 4th beats. That's what gives it that really good swing feel. And of course, if you're playing faster, it's not going to be as accented as much, but that's what's going to give you the feel, that backbeat feel. Okay, let me play it on the real piano and let me give you a sense of what that sounds like. All right, the next bass line that you should absolutely have in your arsenal is what we call the Bossa Nova Bass Line. Now, the way to approach that is always on the chord itself, play the root with a dotted quarter note, and then go up a fifth in the chord. So whatever the chord is, do a fifth. So if it's a major or minor chord, do a fifth. If it's a diminished chord, do the fifth accordingly, if it works with the melody. If not, we'll do something else, and I'll show you that in a second. So A. Okay, so it's a D7 chord. And what you're going to do is, whatever the chord in the next bar is, for example, in this case, the chord stays the same, but when it changes over here to the A flat 7, you're going to anticipate that A flat 7 with a eighth note. So the eighth note that comes on the last beat of the bar, in other words, beat 4.5, you're going to play or anticipate the next chord. So in this particular case, it should be an A flat to an A flat. So from the D7 over A, now there's a situation where if you played the fifth of an A flat diminished chord, so this is the A flat diminished chord here, the E flat doesn't really work with the melody. It creates a major seventh, which is kind of a harsh chord for there. So it would sound like this. So it's just wrong, right? So what you want to do in the bass line is you want to play the fifth, but play a sharp 5. So from the D7 over A, so it's really dotted quarter, eighth note, dotted quarter, eighth note. The last eighth note before the next chord anticipates that chord. Let me go play it on the piano and we'll give you a sense of what it sounds like. All right, the last bass line that I wanted to show you that every jazz piano player should know is the jazz waltz. Typically, it would be in 3/4 time. What we're looking at here is a tune called All Blues, which is in 6/8 time, but it just simply means that the quarter note matches the eighth note. Now, there's a couple of different ways to look at this. The bass line that is written out here is the actual bass line for All Blues. It goes like this. Or if you went down an octave, now that's not a bass line that you would typically play for a jazz waltz, but it is nice to put that in once in a while. But what you would play you can find in these two bars right here where it switches to the D7 sharp 9 chord and the E flat 7 sharp 9 chord, where it goes from a quarter note to an eighth note to a quarter note to an eighth note. If you were playing in 3/4 time, it would be a half note to a quarter note to a half note to a quarter note. So like this. And if you were to do that continuing with the G7 chord, it would be like this. So what it does is it plays the root, the 5th, and then the 6th of the chord. And that's a typical bass line for jazz waltz. So again, root, now what you can do as well is you can play dotted quarter notes as if we were in 3/4 time. So like this. It's almost like a tuplet feel where you're just playing dotted quarter notes in each bar. Just like here, that's obviously the melody, but if you transmitted that to the bass, you would get in 3/4 time dotted quarter notes and in 6/8 time dotted half notes. Okay, let me go to the piano and play this for you, and then we'll come back and I'll tell you how to get your hands on this sheet music. Okay, there you go. There's 4 bass lines that every jazz piano player should know. Definitely something that is great for solo piano, but also taking a couple of chairs in the band, making it cheaper for the band leader to hire you as the pro. So let me share this sheet music with you. It's basically got the bass lines written out. It's a good sample of how you should be playing those bass lines. I'm going to put a link right up here in the corner so that you can absolutely go and download that for free. I put that sheet music together just for you. So go have a look at that and download it. If you like the video, just give it a thumbs up. That would be awesome. That would really help our channel. And of course, if you want to subscribe, if it's your first time here, we'd love to have you. There are well over 200 tutorials on this channel that you can sink your teeth into, and a lot of stuff here that is absolutely made to help you become a better player. Just hit the little bell when you subscribe and you'll be notified of all of the upcoming videos that we're making. And we're making at least 2, 3, sometimes 5 videos a week. So there's a lot to do here. And one last thing, if you're over at jazzmental.com downloading the sheet music, check out some of the other backing tracks and sheet music that we have there to help you with your playing. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I will see you in the next jazz piano tutorial.